Okay, YouTube, welcome back to Double J Construction Hour. I am your host, Double J, and this year we're going to be taking on another Jeep TJ project. This is going to be Project 4, and what we're going to do is we're going to take an old Willys Jeep grill, and we are going to be merging that into the TJ grill. And what you do is you find an old cj2a grill. I actually got this idea off a Jeep forum where this gentleman did this model, and he Frenched that model into his TJ grill, bondoed it up, welded it in, and had a product that looked much like a CJ on his TJ. Now, from what I discovered, it's not actually a cj2a grill. It is not your standard cj2a grill. It is actually an earlier model. You can see where the signal lights are compared to the headlights. So I was fortunate enough to find one on eBay, and I happened to win that bid for 100 bucks Canadian. And about 4 weeks later, it came in the mail, and I picked this up off, and we picked this up off a guy who worked at a old military museum, and he happened to have this lying around. He shipped this one in, and I was lucky enough to be the only bidder on this puppy. And I was lucky enough to get a full headlight assembly and signal lights. So what I discovered is actually that guy had a body lifted model, and it's not actually a cj2a grill. This model is a little bit too long to French into, so we're going to have to do some real fabricating to get this thing to fit. So we have a couple options right here. Once you take your front frame cover off, you see you can build a new one, basically flat to cover up your brake lines and have your sway bar showing, or you can build another frame cover very tight, and I'll give you a little bit more play there. You need an extra, we may have to slice about an inch off this grill, and we'll see how it looks. So if you want to get the full grill in this grill, we may have to slice a bit off in order to expose the full grill. Otherwise, it's just not going to look right. So we'll work with some measurements, come up with the plan, and shoot you later. Till next time. Okay, welcome to part 2 of our project. Now what you have to do next is remove the grill. So there are 3 bolts from the fender, 2 on the inside. There is a center bolt which mounts to the body mount, and there are 6 bolts on the rad. Loosen up the bottom 2 and remove the top 2. They're really tricky to get at. You're going to need some open-end wrenches and a lot of patience to get this one done. And I've just gone ahead, and now that the signal lights are going to be in the center of the grill, you can just go ahead at this time and patch up those, shave those. Now I used a fiberglass. First we put some steel over it just to give it a little bit of hold, and we use a fiberglass mesh with the resin. Mixes, it's pretty difficult. Once it's hardened, it's actually really hard, so you're really gonna have to use an angle grinder to take it down if you put too much on. And then after that, went for a little bit of Bondo glass, which has some reinforced fiberglass just to make it a little bit stronger so it's not going to crack. And then just your traditional body filler in there. And then finally just your Bondo over top. Then after that, you want to put a little bit of primer over the whole thing, and that's going to just reveal any imperfections. And then just use a little bit of glaze and putty over all the little small spots. Sand it down. About a 600 grit works well at this stage. And you can see this fender had some major rust on it, so we went ahead and patched those up while we patched the front fender. You can see it's starting to get a real nice CJ look to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint my whole front end while I'm at it. Why not, right? So basically this cj2a grill is a little bit too long to squeeze into the TJ grill. So right now we have a couple options. We could slice it in half, take a chunk out of it, put it back together just to expose the bottom ring, or we could just cut it as is, put a frame cover over it. So those are your next 2 options. I'm deciding to just give it one slice and put it in, just put a frame cover over it, and maybe a winch in front or some fog lights to kind of cover it up. But I think it'll look good either way. Yeah, if you cut out a chunk either way, when you mend it back together, you're still going to see that line regardless, right? So I'm deciding to just cut a slice off the bottom and just fit it into the TJ grill. And one other thing, the lighting assembly actually had to be cut right down the middle just to get it out of the original grill. So I just gotta slice that out because there are no clips to reattach it, so you have to slice it. Just disconnect your battery cable and slice that. Okay, paint her up. Okay, so while we're waiting for that grill to be made, we're just going to take the time and take advantage of the summer weather and just put a nice coat of paint over this front end. I'm just going to go over a couple painting techniques with you. See, what I like to use is a rust paint. Tremclad will work as well, but this stuff's a little bit cheaper, works just as well. And my technique is you put on multiple coats and water sand in between each coat with the 2000 grit, and that seems to work best. So just lay it on thick, let it bake in the sun, and put on multiple coats for best results. Basically, you want a full can because it really gives you that power in the full can. Start with your full can. Even if the can only has about that much left, don't use it. Start off with a fresh can every time you start your fresh coat. And pick a day that has low wind and a lot of sunshine, and you should be good to go. So just build up the power in the can, and just let it rip. It's good to get all the dust you can off before you spray, otherwise you'll have to water sand again just to get everything off. So you can see the effect. Basically, this paint can has the power of a spray gun right off the bat. And the more coats you put on, the better it gets. Don't go too thick or you'll get runs. Great way to paint a Jeep. And go over it once again. And this really fills in all the tiny little pit holes you can't get with the glazing putty and primer. Okay, we're back and we have put a few coats of this armor coat paint on the front end, and we've put a few too many coats on. Some bad results. Got a little bit of eggshellish bubbling on the one side over here, but you know what? It's a Jeep. We're just gonna go with it. This panel turned out well. The lighter the better. You just want to get it to a nice gloss and then just stop applying it. Water sand after each coat. But we wound up putting a few too many coats on this one, and it wound up eggshelling out a bit. There's nothing really you can do unless you take it all off, so we're just going to go with it. So the shape of the cj2a grill was cut out, and we just placed it in the frame, and it actually does snugly fit. It's going to work well. Just going to tack weld this sucker in, and we're good to go on to the next stage. So you have to cut out quite a bit from the inside of the cj2a frame. What we're going to do with the lights is use the original ones off the TJ and just drill a hole on the inside so they'll basically go right in the 12 volt and plug in. And I'm just going to be using these LED beehive lights for the signal, and they stick out quite a bit. They'll look pretty good. So we'll just tack weld this in, then on to the next stage. So the cj2a grill was cut out, placed in. We've put fiberglass in after it was welded in, and bondoed it up. Not a great finish, but it'll have to do. One of the big issues on this grill is the TJ grill is not 100% flat like the cj2a grill. So where it starts to where it meets up in the middle to where it ends have 3 different points. on the cj2a grill, it's 100% flat. So a bit of an issue trying to line it up. The bad part about mine, I lipped mine out quite a bit, so we're going to have almost a 1/4 of an inch lip over where the hood meets, so the hood will come down to here where the finger is, and there's going to be a lip over, and there isn't really too much I can do to that unless I rethread about 13 bolts. That's one option, or we can just go with the lip. Another thing I've done is I've ordered a set of JK marker lights, because those will actually work with your harness. They will actually just go in. You won't have to make any other adjustments instead of going with an LED that could burn out and then you have to fasten it. It's just a lot of problems, so it's a lot easier just to go with the JK marker lights. That's your best bet. Okay, so we've come down to the final product, and as you can see, the grill lips out quite a bit, but from certain angles it doesn't look that bad. The JK lights were installed. The headlights were installed, and basically we reused all the original wiring for this. Willys logos were added just to put a final stamp on the final product. And overall it had a couple of issues, but in the end it actually looked pretty decent. So not a bad project to tackle. Looks nice and flat from the side, and it really gives you that CJ/Willys feel on a quick glance. And that's about it.